Good morning. It is Thursday, November 8th, and this is The Drill. And thank you very much. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States of America, because I'm the only one that makes the presumption for the status quo. Celebration Day 2. Why I'm celebrating and why I think every person, every conservative / Republican should be celebrating. And part of celebrating is I'm not going to listen. I'm not going to advocate you do the same thing. But as for me, I am going to spend very little time listening to Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity et al. Because I listened to some of them yesterday just to confirm a suspicion, and it was confirmed that they were going to spend all their time being on the defensive, being reactionary again, worrying about what it is that the left-wing news media was going to say, or that what left-wing politicians were going to say, and instead of celebrating the victory at hand. So the celebration of the victory in the Senate is fundamentally about the Senate and helps to actually controls things. The fact that you have the Senate and the presidency are both in the same party, the Democrats have gotten nowhere. Okay, so I celebrate the fact that they won the House, so what? Who cares? Who cares? What can they do? They can't do anything. They cannot pass one single bill without the approval of the Senate and the President of the United States. And furthermore, there's nothing they can do to stop the confirmation of the president's appointments, judicial or otherwise. And so I dance and I celebrate and I say, happy days are here again. The skies above are clear again. And I love it. And everybody else should be celebrating as well. All Republicans and conservatives should be celebrating. By the way, in the interest of full disclosure, I'm not a Republican. I'm registered as an independent. So I'm not a Republican. But in the political climate in which I find myself, the basic choice is between Republicans and conservatives. Who would I rather have running the Senate? The conservatives or socialists? Easy answer. Even faux conservatives, even reactionaries are going to be better than having Bernie Sanders and his ilk running the Senate. So anyways, today, coming up, we've got Ayn Rand and the Ayn Rand lexicon, and then House and Breaking Bad when we come back. All right, thank you. And so Ayn Rand lexicon. I love the Ayn Rand lexicon because, again, Ayn Rand did a lot of things wrong, but she did many, many more things right. She was right about more things than she was wrong about. One of the things that she was right about was the value of defining your terms. And that's what the Ayn Rand lexicon is basically about. It's like a glossary in which Ayn Rand describes the concepts that she finds to be most important and the ones that she's used in many of her works. And like this morning, I heard it was our guy, Glenn Beck, and he was talking about how the Republican Party needed to be have a bigger tent. And the first thing I thought, and then he went ahead and finished his statement, but without defining what he means by a big tent. He doesn't say whether he's being literal or figurative. Is he being literal? Does that mean a big tent is literally we got to go out and find some kind of a circus canopy or something with which to put our Republicans or Republican candidates? No answer. Is he being figurative? Does he mean that big tent means we've got to include more people? Again, no answer. And if we are going to include more people, how many more and what kind are we looking to include? Again, no answer. Where do we draw any limits? Should this, quote, big tent, unquote, be so big that it allows anybody in? What about the American Nazi Party? What about the KKK? What about fascist organizations? Are they welcome in the Republican Party? Again, no answer. And by not having that definition, you leave yourself wide open to letting your opponents define the term for you, and in so doing, helping to define you. So that's why I like the Ayn Rand lexicon, because, again, definition of terms and the importance of concepts. And today's concept is constitution. Today, when a concerted effort is made to obliterate this point, it cannot be repeated too often that the Constitution is a limitation on the government, not on private individuals, that it does not prescribe the conduct of private individuals, only the conduct of the government, that it is not a charter for government power, but a charter of the citizens' protection against the government. Ours was the first government based on and strictly limited by a written document, the Constitution, which specifically forbids it to violate individual rights or to act on whim. The history of the atrocities perpetrated by all other kinds of governments, unrestricted governments acting on unprovable assumptions, demonstrates the value and validity of the original political theory on which this country was built. A complex legal system based on objectively valid principles is required to make a society free and to keep it free. A system that does not depend on the motives, the moral character, or the intentions of any given official. A system that leaves no opportunity, no legal loophole for the development of tyranny. The American system of checks and balances was just such an achievement, and although certain contradictions in the Constitution did leave a loophole for the growth of statism, the incomparable achievement was the concept of a constitution as a means of limiting and restricting the power of the government. The clause that giving Congress the power to regulate interstate commerce is one of the major errors in the Constitution. That clause, more than any other, was the crack in the Constitution's foundation, the entering wedge of statism, which permitted the gradual establishment of the welfare state. But I would venture to say that the framers of the Constitution could not have conceived of what that clause has now become. If, in writing it, one of their goals was to facilitate the flow of trade and prevent the establishment of trade barriers among the states, that clause has reached the opposite destination. And again, that was the Ayn Rand lexicon and the definition of the concept of constitution. And when we come back, I'm going to be reading from House and Philosophy in a minute. Thank you very much. And House and Philosophy, Everybody Lies. House is a television series, and it's about a teaching hospital on the East Coast, and House is one of the doctors, and it's he's a diagnostician. He's somebody that specializes in diagnosing diseases and conditions and whatnot, and prescribing treatments, etc. So when we left this off, basically they were talking about something that was called agent regret, and talking about the difference between regret and remorse, and that what happened in today, earlier, well, it's last night it's happened apparently, at 11 o'clock last night, in Thousand Oaks, California, there was a serial killing. Mass murder. That's what it was. Mass murder, and in a bar. And so I regret the loss of life, but I don't feel remorse, and don't express remorse because it's not appropriate, because I was not the perpetrator. I was not responsible for the deaths of those people. It would be appropriate for the perpetrator, were he still alive, to express remorse. Okay. Anybody else, it would be regret. Agent regret would be somebody that is involved. For instance, the person that owns the bar may have an agent regret about the lives that were lost. So, and they're basically suggesting that that's House's way of dealing with failures on the part of his staff. If somebody dies, then he is expressing an agent regret rather than remorse. And this section is called Agent Regret and Shrugging It Off. Generally, though, House seems to be more like a driver who doesn't display any agent regret if he feels something was not his fault. The contemporary philosopher Margaret Walker argues that regardless of one's attitude toward moral luck and agent responsibility, at the very least, quote, there is one thing I think we will find at least faulty, if not completely unacceptable, that the agent should shrug it off, unquote. Consider this example of an unacceptable response. Quote, it's really too bad about what happened and the damage that's been done, but my involvement was just happenstance, and it was my bad luck to suffer. I admit my negligence, dishonesty, cowardice, opportunism, etc., and accept such blame as is due these common faults. But it would be totally unfair of you to judge, let alone blame me for unlucky results in situations I didn't totally control, and stupid or masochistic of me to let you, unquote. Walker points out that this would strike us as disappointing, even shocking, depending on the nature of the case, and that regardless of the particular details of the agent's exact involvement in the action, quote, we would think there was something wrong with the agent that went deeper than the original offense, unquote. When Chase in, quote, the mistake, unquote, refers to the patient simply as the patient and protests that I obviously got the diagnosis wrong, but I did everything by the book, I couldn't have known what was going to happen, Stacy, as the hospital lawyer, warns him that such a reaction isn't going to win over the hospital review committee, since it might make it seem as if he doesn't care about his patients. Since Chase did make a mistake, Williams might consider his feelings to be somewhat closer to remorse than simple agent regret. However, had the patient recovered, it would have remained a small mistake rather than a serious one, and otherwise Chase did do everything by the book. Chase is wanting to admit his slight negligence, but not wanting to be blamed for the serious consequence, is much like Walker's example. Similarly, before the patient dies, when House points out to Chase that the patient, quote, could die because you were too lazy to ask one simple question, unquote, Chase responds that, quote, she might die because I had the bad luck to spill your damn Vicodin pills, unquote. It had originally been Foreman who was supposed to take care of the woman, but due to Chase's clumsiness, House peevishly assigned the woman to Chase. Consequently, is it then unfair to judge Chase for the unlucky circumstance of the woman being his patient in the first place? Had it been Foreman in charge, Chase would never have had the opportunity to make the mistake at all. This is often referred to as antecedent luck, or luck in circumstances. How much agent regret is desirable for doctors who must make life and death decisions on a regular basis? It would be bad to be paralyzed by it, as House says of the patient who loses her will in House training. What's life without the ability to make stupid choices? If a patient's organs are rapidly failing and test results are unlikely to come back before the patient dies, doctors need to go on the information available at the time, however scanty, and make a decision, whatever the results might ultimately be. When can the doctors in-house be said to have done enough to reasonably protect themselves from excessive regret? And really what we're coming down to, again, is it's still ethics, and the ethical decision is to do what's right, and you let the chips fall where they may. You let the consequences fall where they may. Okay, it's not, the review board isn't going to like my attitude, but the issue is, am I speaking the truth? Is this the way things accurately, is this accurately reflecting what it is that happened, what I did? I did what I was supposed to do. The patient died anyway. There's nothing I can do about it. How it sounds or how it feels or what the optics of it are irrelevant. It's true. Now, the review board may say, well, screw you. We're going to kick you out of here. We're going to take your, whatever the heck the disciplinary action they choose to take. And you got to take your lumps and move on. That's the ethical thing to do. What's going on here with the author is kind of describing tactics. and trying to describe, well, is it better to be honest, or in this situation, maybe it would be better to be dishonest, slightly dishonest. Don't tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Tell the truth, but shade it in such a way that it makes you look good. No, that's unethical and immoral. And once you go down that road, then you're in the position where you get up every morning and you ask yourself, because even if you're successful, let's say you are manipulative and you're cunning and you're shrewd and you've got all the angles figured out, you know exactly how to say things to make people do what you want, in this particular case, give you passing marks with, have the review board go ahead and exonerate you, then you're still going to wake up every morning and ask yourself, what's the meaning of life? Is this it? This is what I get to do every single day, every minute of every day for the rest of my life? Is calculate and recalculate. I got to treat life as a poker game. I've got to be guessing at whether or not somebody has ace high or a full house. Whether or not I should ante, or not ante up, but whether or not I should call, bluff, or fold. Call, raise, or fold. Let's put it that way. And I got to go through the scenario every day with every person I come in contact with. It's exhausting. You're gonna be dead tired by the time you hit the pillow at night. And again, every time you wake up in the morning, you're going to be asking yourself, why do I bother? Why do I bother? So do the things that you want to do, the things that are ethical. And that means you do what's right and you let your chips fall where they may. Sometimes things are going to be, it's going to be where you're going to be maybe patted on the back and given a promotion or whatever. People are going to say, hey, you're a wonderful guy. You get rewarded for it, in other words. And sometimes you might end up getting punished. And that's a shame, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do what's right. So that was House, Everybody Lies is the subtitle of the book. House and Philosophy, Everybody Lies. And when we come back, it's going to be Breaking Bad, Batter Living Through Chemistry. Thank you very much. Welcome back. Breaking Bad, about a high school chemistry teacher that, quote, breaks bad. In other words, he decides to become a meth dealer. And not just a nickel and dime meth dealer, but the biggest meth dealer, I don't know, maybe in the world, maybe just on the West Coast or whatever. But I mean, making millions and millions of dollars making meth. And he did this because he was concerned about the ability to afford his chemo treatments that were supposed to save his life behind a diagnosis of lung cancer. So, and this section of the chapter is called Breaking Bad or Born That Way. Many of history's greatest philosophers broke bad at some point in their lives. Heidegger was a Nazi, Kierkegaard was excommunicated, Abelard was an infamous playa before his lover's father and brother castrated and dishonored him, cut off his junk and sent him packing. Boethius, Anaximander, and of course Socrates were all executed for heresy, among other things. Even Plato was accused of profaning the mysteries, revealing the secrets of his crew to an outsider. This was punishable by death in most creative ways. Fortunately for Plato, he's merely ostracized from Athens, forced to bounce from his crib until the heat died down. Before he earned the name Saint Augustine, Aurelius Augustinus was a confessed adulterer. He had a rep for hooking up with the MILFs of Carthage, and fornicator. He had mad relations with the females. Aurelius, too, was a man of science. He was deeply committed to the mother of all sciences, namely philosophy. Like Walt, Aurelius made his living as a teacher before becoming a priest. He taught rhetoric and argumentation in Rome. Like Walt, Aurelius expressed a nagging concern for redemption. And like Walt, this concern led Aurelius to be deeply troubled by the origins and nature of evil, whether evil is a part of nature and, as such, just a thing that happens, or whether evil comes about through people's choices and actions. So the point of this, all of this, is again, is when you get right down to it, is redemption. And for at least I can think of off the top of my head, Socrates redeemed himself by submitting to the punishment that was meted out to him, and he was executed. And so he has redeemed himself. He's done it posthumously, but he has redeemed himself. St. Augustine did the same thing. He used to be an adulterer. He used to be a fornicator. He used to do all those things until he became priestly and started changing his ways and redeeming himself. I don't know that Heidegger ever did redeem himself. I think he died a Nazi. And I don't know what the deal is with Kierkegaard or Abelard or the others. But that's really the issue, is, are you making amends? It's not just enough to say, hey, I'm sorry. You got to make amends. If you've created harm, you've created damage by what you've done, how you've acted, then you have to do something to make amends. And to the degree that you do that is the degree to which you are redeemed. So that brings us to the conclusion of another episode of The Drill. And until next time, and I thank you very much for listening, and have a great day.